Imagine a man locked away for nearly 3 decades, cut off from the world, his dreams seemingly crushed. What emerges from that darkness? A revolutionary, a bitter man, or a leader who would change the course of history? This is the story of Nelson Mandela, a testament to the idea that the deepest struggles can forge the most profound strength. Born in a small South African village, Rolihlahla Mandela was destined for a life far from the global stage. His early years were steeped in tradition, listening to tribal elders, learning about a history of freedom before the arrival of colonizers. This foundation of justice and heritage would become the bedrock of his life's work. As a young man, he moved to Johannesburg, where he witnessed firsthand the brutal reality of apartheid, a system of institutionalized racial segregation that stripped black South Africans of their rights, their land, and their dignity. It was a world of passes, segregated facilities, and constant humiliation. This wasn't just politics for him. It was a deeply personal injustice that ignited a fire within him. He couldn't stand by. He had to act. Joining the African National Congress, or ANC, Mandela initially believed in nonviolent protest. Inspired by leaders like Gandhi, he participated in boycotts, strikes, and civil disobedience. But the government's response was always violence. The Sharpeville massacre in 1960, where police opened fire on peaceful protesters, was a turning point. Mandela realized that peaceful resistance alone was not enough against such a brutal regime. He co-founded Umkhonto we Sizwe, the armed wing of the ANC, not to harm civilians but to sabotage government infrastructure, a strategic shift from protest to resistance. This decision marked him as a terrorist in the eyes of the state, but as a freedom fighter to his people. His growing influence made him a prime target. In 1962, he was captured. The Rivonia trial was a sham. Mandela and his comrades faced charges that could lead to the death penalty. Standing in the dock, he delivered one of the most powerful speeches of the 20th century. He declared, "I have fought against white domination, and I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and to achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." He was spared death but sentenced to life in prison. He was sent to Robben Island, a desolate rock in the middle of the ocean. Robben Island was designed to break spirits. Prisoners were forced into hard labor, crushing rocks in a limestone quarry under the blinding sun. The guards were cruel, the conditions were harsh, and communication with the outside world was almost non-existent. Mandela was confined to a tiny cell, barely large enough to lie down in. For 27 years, this was his world. But instead of breaking him, prison became his university. He learned to control his emotions, to understand his enemies, and to turn his suffering into strength. He organized secret classes, teaching fellow prisoners to read and write. He debated politics and philosophy, turning the prison yard into a crucible of leadership. He even learned Afrikaans, the language of his oppressors, so he could understand their mindset and, one day, negotiate with them on their own terms. This wasn't about surrender. It was a strategic masterpiece in human connection. While Mandela was locked away, his legend grew. The Free Nelson Mandela campaign became a global movement. Musicians sang about him, students protested for him, and nations imposed sanctions on South Africa. He became the world's most famous political prisoner, a symbol of the fight against injustice everywhere. Inside prison, he was a beacon of hope. He taught his fellow inmates that even though their bodies were captive, their minds and spirits must remain free. He insisted on dignity, demanding respect from the guards and maintaining his own sense of self-worth. He was leading a nation from a 7-by-9-foot cell. By the late 1980s, the apartheid regime was crumbling under internal resistance and international pressure. They knew they needed to negotiate, and there was only one man they could talk to: Nelson Mandela. Secret talks began. Finally, on February 11, 1990, the moment the world had been waiting for arrived. A 71-year-old Mandela, gray but unbowed, walked out of Victor Verster prison a free man, his hand held high in a fist of defiance and victory. The world watched, breathless. But what would he do next? Would he seek revenge for the 27 years stolen from him? This is where the true miracle of Mandela's leadership shines brightest. Instead of calling for retribution, he called for reconciliation. He knew that the cycle of violence and hatred had to be broken for South Africa to have a future. He worked alongside his former jailer, President F.W. de Klerk, to dismantle apartheid and draft a new constitution. It was a perilous time. The country was on the brink of civil war, but Mandela's message of forgiveness and unity held it together. He preached that true freedom wasn't just about casting off one's own chains, but about living in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. In 1994, South Africa held its first-ever multiracial democratic election. Millions of people who had never been allowed to vote before stood in lines for hours, and they elected Nelson Mandela as their president. His inauguration was a powerful symbol of a new beginning. He didn't purge the old government. He invited his former enemies into his administration, forming a government of national unity. He even invited one of his former Robben Island jailers to his inauguration as a VIP guest. It was a masterclass in forgiveness, showing the world that peace is built not on vengeance, but on understanding. As president, Mandela used his immense moral authority to heal a divided nation. He famously wore the jersey of the Springboks, South Africa's national rugby team, which had long been a symbol of white Afrikaner pride. By cheering for them during the 1995 Rugby World Cup, he signaled to both black and white South Africans that they were one nation. It was a simple gesture with profound impact, uniting a country around a shared moment of triumph. He showed that leadership isn't always about grand policies. Sometimes it's about shared humanity. Nelson Mandela served only one term as president, stepping down to ensure the strength of the democratic institutions he helped build. He spent the rest of his life as a global statesman, a champion for peace and a voice for the vulnerable. His story teaches us that our circumstances do not define us. Our response to them does. He transformed 27 years of pain into a lesson of perseverance, turning his prison cell into a platform for global change. His life is a powerful reminder that true leadership is forged in the fires of adversity, and that our purpose should never be silenced by our pain. The spirit of Madiba, as he was affectionately known, continues to inspire us to build a better, more just, and more forgiving world. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring content, and share this video to keep Mandela's incredible legacy alive. We'll see you in the next one.